Today we're looking at Breakers collection. This is the demo. Now, apparently the Breakers series is a fighting game series that dropped in 96 with the original Breakers. And the sequel came out in 98, Breakers Revenge. I don't know how I missed at least the original one, because this was the heyday when I was in the arcade. So I have never seen this game. I saw, I guess, a advertisement for a couple months ago. It just dropped in time of this recording in January of 2024. I think it was 2024. Anyway, it dropped not too long ago, and it's a collection of both Breakers and Breakers Revenge. So I figured, I saw the demo while I booted up to see exactly how it plays and what it's all about. Now, I'm assuming with the full game, you probably have a more robust selection, but even with this, you still have 8 different characters to choose from with regards to your players. And one of the things that you see here is that you're going to have characters that are very similar to what maybe you find on Street Fighter. Like the main character here comes across as a Ken Ryu type. The Egyptian person comes off very much like a clone of Dhalsim. Maybe not a full one-to-one, but definitely a clone with the sort of poses as well as the elongated appendages there. Fighting-wise, control-wise, it plays very similar to Street Fighter. I think if you play any fighting game from that era, they are going to play very similarly. It adopts a lot of the special stuff that you saw, or the special meter that you saw in later fighting games of that era. You know, by that time when we had our Marvel games, X-Men games, Street Fighter Alpha I think was out by then. So you saw a lot of these games adopt that meter, and you see Breakers has that as well. Now apparently this dropped for arcade as well as Neo Geo, and of course, who had a Neo Geo if you didn't have money back then? So the fighting style, it's, you know, there are some differences compared to coming to this from a Street Fighter-esque. And also, I yearn for an arcade stick. I don't have one. I want to get one but I don't play fighting games nearly as much. There is something about having an arcade stick and playing a game like this to really get a good feel for it with a controller. Even after all these years of playing fighting games with controllers, still feels weird and foreign. Now see, this is an obvious homage or ripoff to Blanca's stage. While this combatant is female, she's clearly very, very feral, even with the blue hair. Her stance is very much like Blanca. The stage itself is very reminiscent of Blanca as well. And even her movesets are still very reminiscent of Blanca. Now, one of the things I find interesting in this is it's a tag, and I'm not sure if you can switch in and out characters. That aspect I haven't discovered yet. But it's a one round and you're done, and you go into the next combatant, so to speak. Or you fight the combatant and then it goes to the counterpart. So I thought that was interesting and somewhat, I think, unique. I don't think King of Fighters was really doing that then. If I remember correctly, maybe the Marvel vs. Capcom series, but I think that may have come out later. I don't remember exactly the time frame for Marvel vs. Capcom, but I feel like it was around that time series. So yeah, it's one of those things where it still has some unique features of the era in this game, even though the gameplay and even the characters aren't exactly wholly original. But I can see why this game has a cult following. One of the things I really never realized, or not realized, I hadn't figured out yet, is the special moves. That's something that eluded me. I tried the typical, you know, all 3 punch or kick buttons with a half circle, and nothing really worked for me when it came to playing this game and utilizing that meter. So that's something I definitely got to go back in and work on. I think, again, going back to that arcade stick, I think I'd have a easier time with the arcade stick if that's something that I actually had in my possession. So, but I will say overall, the game is pretty fast paced. If you like fighting games, especially older 2D fighting games, pixels fighting games, you like it. I do like the specials. I thought they were really cool and done very well. But again, this isn't really original, and that's my biggest issue. One of the things with a lot of the games that came out, the fighting games particularly, that came out on the Neo Geo, they were unique. You got the Art of Fighting series, King of Fighters, and again, I know King of Fighters is quote unquote the first in that King of Fighters. Fatal Fury, which is evolved into King of Fighters, especially in that time, it was one of those things that evolved from Street Fighter, especially with some of the history of that game. But it still was such a unique entry. It stood out on its own. And Breakers, even playing through this, now we're going to Breakers Revenge, the sequel. It still reminds me so much of every other game that came out during that era. So I can definitely see why this game had, I don't know, kind of fell into obscurity for it to be a cult classic, because it's one of those games where it looks cool, but if you're talking about an arcade in 1996, you're definitely going to get drowned out by all the other games that are there. I mean, by that time, what you had the Marvel vs. series out, you still had previous games like Darkstalker, Street Fighter 3, whatnot. So we still were playing whatever version of Street Fighter 2. I think Street Fighter Alpha was probably out by then as well in the arcades, if I remember correctly. Some entry in the King of Fighters series was out in 96. So you had, and then Killer Instinct as well was still around, and I'm trying to think, Killer Instinct 2 come out by this point in time. I don't think so. I think we were still playing Killer Instinct 1 in the arcades by the time this would have originally dropped, at least the first game. Now by 98, you saw a decline in arcades. That's when you really saw that drop as the home console market really started to pick up, especially fighting games were concerned. So it's interesting. I wonder how widespread this was, because I'm really surprised. I don't remember seeing this game or playing this game, because that's what we did. 95, 96, we were in arcade. That's where we lived. So the fact that I don't remember seeing this game, this arcade cabinet never made it to my local arcade that I spent pretty much every Friday and Saturday in, is really quite surprising. Also let you know how fierce it was for arcade space back in the day, especially for fighting games, because that's all we played. And there was so many good games back then. This game so far it's not bad. It's not bad at all. The problem is, again, it doesn't stand out whatsoever, in my opinion. Character designs it reminds you of others. Even the woman earlier, like the first time I faced it, I was like, oh, this is a Chun-Li clone. Or you have characters that are amalgamations of other characters. Even the stage right now with the Kabuki warrior in the background is very reminiscent of E Honda. So I understand why this fell into obscurity, why it's a cult classic, because this is not remarkable, especially in the time period it came out. Man, it was just way too much competition for this game. But if you're watching this, let me know if you remember playing this game in the arcades back in 96 and 98, because it escapes me. I never remember seeing this game. This character with the sword reminds me directly of again, we talk about Neo Geo exclusive fighters that stood out. Samurai Showdown, the woman character with the sword. Even the moveset reminds me very much of her. Yeah, like literally, it's like 1-to-1 almost in some respects as far as this guy's moveset with her. So they even imitate their own series. So, which is kind of neat and interesting, but yeah, still, like, even this way this character flips out, Blanca, straight up rip off of Blanca. As you see, I'm getting my ass handed to me as far as this character is concerned. I think I was just getting tired of playing this game at this point in time. Again, I hate to reiterate it. It's just it doesn't stand out. I will forget this fighting game tomorrow, and in the great pantheon of fighting games that are available, this one is just forgettable. It's not horrible, but there's nothing about this game that really makes it stand out, to me, at least. When it comes to fighting games and even the fighting game collections that are available, I don't remember if this is 9 or 19 for these two games, but even if it's 19, you can find a better fighting collection for $19. I lost, so that means game over.